In this episode of Detroit Performs, an American sports illustrator merges impressionism with realistic portraiture. Skateboarders take on architecture of abandoned Detroit buildings and art of the game. It's all ahead on this edition of Detroit Performs.
Funding for Detroit Performs is provided by the Michigan Council for Arts and Cultural Affairs and the National Endowment for the Arts, and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, and welcome to Detroit Performs. I'm your host, DJ Oliver, and I'm at the Art of Custom Framing in Troy, where our first artist, Doug West, shows some of his work. We caught up with Doug as he transitions from professional athlete paintings to a new venture.
There are great sports cities, but when it comes to Detroit, probably the greatest. In 1980, I had a chance meeting with Muhammad Ali at a sports show, and that sort of began my art career. I was the only guy in line with a painting, and when he came to me, he stopped, and he said, "What is this?" And I said, "It's a painting." He said, "Who's the artist?" And I said, "I'm the artist." He said, "You're the greatest." And when he said that, that was my measuring bar. Then I thought my work better be the greatest. I love the human form, so when you see the motion and movement, the expression, the excitement, and the highs and lows of sports, and you want to paint that or draw that, there's nothing like it. Because in that moment that's captured, if you can get that on a canvas, you have literally a masterpiece. It began with baseball, and baseball is almost a quiet sport. Football has that rush of excitement and the noise of the crowd. Tennis, again, is a different sport. Each sport is so different, and golf being very quiet. So as far as a favorite sport goes, it really depends on the mood I'm in. If I'm in a quiet mood, I might paint a golfer or a tennis player. If I'm in an excited mood, then I might do football. In the late 1990s, I had an agent. He calls me Maestro. He said, "Maestro, what's your dream?" I said, "I have several dreams. I'd like to paint for the Baseball Hall of Fame." I was a baseball fan growing up. And so through his connections, before I knew we were in Cooperstown, at the Baseball Hall of Fame, and they selected me as their artist. From there, a lot of things happened. I was in Canada with a group of guys. I became the artist for the Hockey Hall of Fame. From there, different Hall of Fames happened. What I like to do is I go through old magazines, and I'll look at the photographs, covers, pictures. I'll listen to people and take it in. I'm not aware of it, but when I go back, I'll paint them. Somehow the essence comes out, and people say, "You've really captured them," and I've never watched them on film. You have to capture the essence of a person. I think if you can do that and do it with dignity, that your work will shine every time. Capturing the expression of a player is interesting, and capturing the light in their eyes. What happened for me is I wanted to have a deeper understanding of myself. But what came with that was so interesting because it put light in the subjects that I painted. And I noticed too that the expressions, as I was more honest with myself and freer, that the expressions in the work just almost drip with expressions. You can almost feel their sweat in the poses. So that all transferred into my work. So what I like to do is I'll work right side up to lay the image out. Once everything's in place, then what I do is I flip the canvas and I paint everything upside down. They're not faces, they're not shapes, they're what I call lines of motion. Barry Sanders is a great example. Barry Sanders, when he runs actually in two directions. His movement is a forward movement, but there's a backward bend. And if I were to paint that, lean it too much to the left or too much to the right, it doesn't look right. So Barry Sanders is a great example here in Detroit. I've done many Barry Sanders, and he's always the same thing. The trick is upside down, get his motion, and then paint his face. I did a piece on Michael Jordan that was really unique. I wanted to take art to a different level. So I thought, what I'll do is I'll paint the Bulls uniform color on the background and then put the Jordan on top of that. which is really unheard of, red on red. And then I thought, what if I didn't paint the lines and I let the viewer finish the piece by looking at the painting? Their eyes could finish the lines. I really want to make this Miguel Cabrera a special piece. I want to kind of capture his career. So today I'm going to be painting Miguel Cabrera upside down and right side up. You can follow some of my brush strokes and see a little of my technique in doing the piece. Now this little thing, this is called glazing. And what this does, it's a thin coat of paint like a Kool-Aid. And when you put it on there, it transforms the color. And if you do layer after layer of glazing, the piece is beautiful. In the areas that where the light hits, if you add yellow and a little red, it just makes it jump with glazing. I think with a great piece of art, you let it speak to you. It will move you. Often I'll see the piece before it exists.
He seems to just be able to capture the essence of that athlete in his painting. And he was realistic, but also I could see that emerging expressionist feel. Now he has just a new freedom. He introduced his new body of work, and he actually had me shut my eyes to bring in his new work. And when I opened my eyes, I saw a newly emerging expressionistic painter. So I was pretty amazed at that.
I had to free myself. So I found an old canvas and I began to splash colors on the canvas. And I felt that release and that freedom. And suddenly I began swirling colors and I did a Jimi Hendrix piece. So I became this expressionist painter, bringing realism into expressionism with color. And so I've recently been in contact with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and they've agreed to put one of my pieces in the Hall of Fame, a tribute to Prince. There's an interesting quality to my rock and roll pieces. It was never thought out, but it has happened. The pieces have sort of a haunting quality. My sister-in-law says that I've painted them as they are now, that many are deceased. She said it's as if you've placed their soul on the canvas, and there is a dimension in the work. One of the pieces, the Ghost of Imagine, which is a John Lennon piece, began with these swirls of color, and the image falls away, and yet it's there, and yet it's not. And the other thing that I love about these pieces is you have to sort of look into the piece to discover them. It's as if you're seeing a different dimension. But that's what's outstanding, I think, of these pieces. It's a buildup of colors, and colors that almost shouldn't go together. And somehow it works.
Doug is taking it to a more of a passionate level, I guess I would say. He's trying to get his emotions. You're seeing that coming through in these portraits. I said, Doug, paint big. And he pulled up with his car and Obama strapped to the top. And I said, you did it, and it's stunning, and I just love that piece. You're just drawn to that piece, and I'm very excited for him. I had a client walk in and fall in love with Michael. She said, this was my idol growing up. I love Michael. When they're looking at an icon, they're just lighting up.
There are a lot of great artists that came from Detroit. Detroit is such a rich heritage in music and sports. It's like I've fallen into the right field.
You can learn more about Doug West on DetroitPerforms.org. Next up, we take you deep into one of Detroit's most recognized abandoned buildings, where skateboarders maneuver around intricate architecture in Jordan Garland's #ADetroitFilm.
The Fisher Body Plant was built in 1919, designed by late great architect Albert Kahn. A factory that once helped mobilize an entire nation now sits in ruin on the distant outskirts of Detroit's downtown. Long gone are the glory days of the plant. There is no longer tens of thousands of people in foot traffic working in unison to supply a healthy home to their middle-class families. What remains is the result of deindustrialization. What remains says more about the state of a great city than anything that's been in the media. An ominous feeling creeps up as you enter the plant. It's like walking in a distant world, or a place that's long been forgotten.
I first thought maybe we should have like a dust cover or something because, you know, you don't know what's in the air. You know, a lot of that paint is lead-based because it's an old factory.
I definitely thought this looks like it's from a movie and not something out of real life. It just doesn't seem real that something could be that abandoned. As you ascend floors, light creeps in through the window panes that span vast sections of walls, next to none of them left unshattered. It's a harsh lesson in contrast as vibrant green plant life sprouts through so much decay. It reminds you that eventually nature takes everything back as its own. After decades of fires, lack of maintenance, and harsh weather conditions, many spots in the plant have already begun to collapse. Skateboarders and BMX riders can be seen on every floor, creating and building what they can out of the factory's remains. The most awe-inspiring sight is the result of a floor collapsing and forming a ramp on the ground below. Initially exploring the plant was based on thinking that spot was way better than it was, and then getting there and realizing it's probably the hardest thing I've ever had to skate.
I actually climbed up there, and when I stood up there, I didn't realize I was going to be standing on like this little 4-inch beam. I thought I would have like a wall to step on, but that wasn't the case, so it was a little bit rocky and shaky, but I just pushed through it.
What makes the spot so hard to skate is all the debris and the cracks and just the fact that it wasn't even meant to ever be skated in the first place.
I didn't really think it would be possible. And then we actually looked down at the ground and he said he was going to go for it. And Mike is a savage, so he just was all right, he's going to give it a go.
We couldn't even believe that he did it or that it even went down how it did.
I couldn't even bar that. I couldn't even like.
Oh, look at this, dude. You know, dude, it's this. Look, what you're standing in. It's like that. So you, yeah, you know? Sometimes you have to seek out the moments that are the most eye-opening. Sometimes you have to take the first step on the adventure to creating them yourself.
You can learn more about hashtag A Detroit Film and all the artists featured here today on DetroitPerforms.org. Now, let's check out some upcoming events happening in and around the D. To discover more events in Greater Detroit, visit ixity.com. Laguna College of Arts and Design gives its students an extensive foundation in digital arts. Its dedicated staff of well-immersed industry veterans gives students the tools they need for the future.
I mean, I just got out of the room now talking to a student with her ideas for a game, and some of the most fresh and original things I've heard of, in a long time. When looking at student work, there's a couple different parts of it. There's the technical craftsmanship of being able to concept design a character or 3D model a character that would go in the game and use, to create on a computer. But then there's sort of that underlying creative instinct that they might have.
An instinct that's bursting beyond the gaming department. Senior Jessica Neckor uses her talents in digital media to raise consumer awareness about the clothing and retail industry. Inspired by the 2013 factory collapse in Bangladesh, Jessica created an app.
So the app is called Threadbare, and you could go to a store, take your phone, and then scan the barcodes, and then it would tell you the ratings of the different aspects about a company, like their sustainability, their workers' rights, and all of that. So it would give customers an option and more insight into the companies that they're supporting.
Julian Lozano's latest shoe design pays homage to his immigrant parents and their search for the American dream.
I made a shoe line that's taking Mexican embroidery on leather garments and pretty much placing it on the shoe.
An art school in a seaside artist community, the Laguna College of Art and Design, or LCAD, has called Laguna Canyon home since 1961.
It's a very small school. For the longest time, no one had really heard about us.
And small it has remained, but what the founding fathers of the 60s could not have predicted is LCAD's flourishing majors in game art, design and digital media, textile and action sports design. Working partnerships with heavyweights from DreamWorks, Vans, Hurley, Nike, and Blizzard Entertainment keep the fickle nature of the industry on point.
We have fabulous faculty. First of all, they have street cred, and the students appreciate that.
Traditional studies in sculpture, illustration, drawing, and painting remain well represented, but much of LCAD's strength lie in its fearless following of applied arts and trends.
Ideally, I think that when they graduate, they want to get a job working in game development, video game development, right, as an artist. So that can involve being a concept designer, an environment designer, 3D modeling artist, or animator. Right now, games, there's so much that goes into creating them, and you need to have a certain skill level in traditional foundation art skills along with the technical requirements. And the game industry just keeps growing and growing, and there's no shortage of need for, creative people to come up with all the amazing ideas and content for games.
For LCAD students, the job search starts almost as soon as the acceptance letter is signed. The tech-savvy students find a voice for their unbound enthusiasm with guidance from industry-pedigreed veterans. Once on campus, it's easy to see that life in Laguna is sometimes inspiration in itself.
I do textile design, so my project last year was totally inspired by my painting on surfboards, a lot of florals. So I created some shoes with floral patterns, kind of like Hawaiian floral patterns, and then I also did apparel to go along with it. I'm actually designing a wetsuit right now, so I'm doing like a Vans Starfish, that's the name of my wetsuit line.
As the creative wheels turn within the walls of LCAD, practical application happens just outside the canyon, well before the students get their diploma.
So they really have to understand the design, the business, and then also what the world's doing, and to be ready to step into that scenario.
3 interns every 3 months skate through the doors of Vans corporate headquarters in Orange County, a partnership that is beneficial for both the college and the skate giant.
Because we're a small team and it's a small group, it's very personal. It's an instant bonding with them and bringing them into the team. They become a one of us. They become just an extension of our team, producing and working with us alongside. It's not we're dependent somewhat on them and their creativity to bring new ideas and fresh ideas. And the LCAD group has consistently been a really creative group for us to utilize as a resource.
And knowing that even the most innovative work environment can benefit from a fresh perspective is just good business and an unexpected payoff.
I think sometimes we become jaded in it as we're always producing stuff and you don't realize how excited, when they see that it's ending up in a catalog, or they see that, when we get the sample, and they're seeing the actual physical sample for the first time, you kind of get to live through that again through them, which is always awesome.
You can learn more about Laguna College of Arts and Design on the Detroit Performs website. And that wraps it up for this edition of Detroit Performs. As always, for more arts and culture, head to DetroitPerforms.org, where you'll find featured videos, blogs, and information on upcoming arts events. Also, check us out on Facebook and Twitter. I'd like to thank the Art of Custom Framing for having us out here today. Until next Tuesday, get out there and show the world how Detroit performs, y'all. I'm DJ Oliver. Thanks for watching, guys.
Funding for Detroit Performs is provided by the Michigan Council for Arts and Cultural Affairs and the National Endowment for the Arts, and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.